Hello everyone, welcome back to another developer interview here at Digital Foundry. We are joined today by a special friend of the show and a special friend of ours. It is Joe, what's your last name? Modzeleski?
Modzeleski?
Modzeleski. I never say your last name much in my daily life.
I would encourage you not to.
But you are here because a few weeks ago we did an interview with Modern Vintage Gamer on the Carbon engine, and he brought you up quite a few times and had a lot of good things to say, and I understand why. So we wanted to have you on the show to kind of talk about your side of the Carbon engine, the creation of it, and also your background, because I feel like that you kind of end up in the background a bit in your own projects. We want to highlight you one time, and here you are. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks for having me. The one time, that's all I need. Highlight me once, and then you'll know to never highlight me again.
But we are also joined by another person. We have, of course, on the team here, John Lemon.
Audi, Joe. I couldn't miss this. Gonna talk to another great developer here who I always hear good things about. So
people are lying.
It is nice to have you here. Even if those are lies, in my heart, they're still true. So,
well, this is awesome. I've wanted to do something like this for a while. I love the show. I love Audi. I've had good times talking with you, John, and in Twitter DMs in the past. So,
this is your first time on cam.
That's right.
I think this is the first time we've ever talked on camera.
Exactly. Never forget it.
I'll never forget this one. Especially all the Doom stuff back there. It's like,
the helmets.
Mm-hmm. I like hell. I like demons when they're dead. It's a good video game.
And that was put out recently by Limited Run, who, in fact, are your employer.
That is my employer. So don't ask me anything about NDAs, because I won't tell you.
We will try.
So anyway, let's talk about some NDAs.
Okay, so first of all, you're not going to believe.
No, I think we're both under pretty strict NDAs, with Limited Run. As I'm also part of some of their projects, so we'll try to avoid
that's
it.
Good to disclose for sure, because you have, under the Sekai project, you guys have released some stuff with them, and the quality of the packaging has been top notch, so it's really cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, we design most of our stuff ourselves, even though Limited Run does great work. It's fun to work with Limited Run in that capacity, because Shadi is amazing in what he does, and then Vivi at our side is really good. So yeah, I'm a bit biased, but I think the Sakai stuff ends up looking very good.
It all comes out looking great.
Yeah. And I mean, just to give a bit of background on you, Joe, because you say you're a big fan of the show, and I have to say that has to be true, because the first time you and I met in person was GDC 2018, 2019, I forget which
year it was too. It was one of those two.
And let's just say that it took us like a minute to become best friends. It didn't take long.
You came up to me. Oh, I forget what you were wearing. You weren't wearing a Bubsy shirt. You were wearing a Bubsy shirt under something.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It was probably the green jacket.
And you came up to me and you took the shirt off and had the Bubsy. I want to say you had more than one at that event. Like, I think you had multiple Bubsy shirts, and you and I had interacted via email through Limited Run before that.
Yeah.
And there was a pre-established distaste for Bubsy on my end, so you
on
knew.
Your end.
You knew what you were doing. Listen, if you had to choose any way to introduce yourself in person, that was the right way to do it.
Oh, it works. I can tell you, it's a key to success. But speaking of Bubsy, it must have been 2019 actually, because one of the first things that you talked to me about was the fact that, like, I think we came to the topic of content creators, and the first thing you told me was just kind of like, man, DF Retro is the best show though. And you, at the time, you had no idea. And I actually kept it secret at the time that I had been involved with DF Retro and the Bubsy episode.
Yeah, the Bubsy episode. That episode came... I don't know if it came out or if you sent me a private link for it. I was in an airport.
I believe it came out right before or during. I forget.
It was sometime around there.
Yeah. Kind of timeline. It was around that time.
Yeah.
But I just remember sitting, when I was talking to you about it, you we're talking about DF Retro stuff, and you were mentioning all these episodes you enjoyed, and I so wanted to tell you that, like, you do know we actually did a Bubsy episode on DF Retro, and but I kept it secret.
It was a complete surprise. When it came out, I remember it must have been around an event, if not that same event, right? Because I was in an airport, I believe, heading home, and our flight was it got delayed, like boarding got delayed, and that's when I noticed that the episode had either gone live or you linked me to it, and I was like feverishly trying to get good enough Wi-Fi in the airport to download it so I could watch it on the plane, and I did, and it was really, really good. I was laughing a lot to myself on that flight.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it was a big moment in my life as well, because it opened so many doors, quite legitimately.
That is so wild to think. The Bubster came through once again in the most unexpected way.
Saved my life.
I'm not okay with it.
But at that GDC though, it was interesting because I had been affiliated with Limited Run and worked with them for quite a few years at that point, and you were new to the company, and I wasn't really, aware of you prior to this, and I was kind of curious what your role in the company would be. But what struck me immediately as we talked and as we were going through the GDC week was that you had such an inherent eye for what is authentically retro and like good gameplay ideas, and not only that, but like a technical expertise that I definitely knew right away that the company would have a great usage of. And you would prove this to me personally, because I had a game where the developer in Japan had we still don't know, but apparently passed away, was the message that was coming through our company. So we got a build which didn't work, and we had no idea what to do with it. But I just had the idea, maybe I can send it to you. And sure enough, you took like a few days and you fixed the game and made it shippable for us. And I was so amazed by just the ability that you had, because this wasn't an easy task. I mean, this game was, a mess to get running on the PS VR. So, you proved yourself very quickly to me that Limited Run had done an amazing thing getting the right guy on their team.
So, well, that's super kind words. And, all I did was what I could.
And that's kind of the interesting thing, Joe. Is it's like I think people often think of Limited Run as like, oh, they're just putting out games that already exist, just slapping them on a disc and doing a bunch of art, and there you go. But there's actually a lot more going on in the background, especially technically. And I mean, you're like the main programming guy there, right? I mean.
Now, yeah. So when I started, we had and there are more. When I started, there was a team of programmers, and there's only so much I can say because of NDAs. But a few of the programmers still work for the company Mighty Rabbit, that is kind of like affiliated, like as the origins of Limited Run. So Mighty Rabbit still exists, even though we all kind of live under one building. And there are other programmers, but they work on different projects, and like I don't really know what I can disclose, because like they work kind of contract work for other projects external to the company. And over time, it got to a point where I was the only in-house like active programmer. But initially, there was still Adrian was another programmer that worked on a lot of ports that we did. There's a lot of times where we'd put out a game. So like Night Trap is a good example, where Night Trap came out on PlayStation 4, and then we actually in-house did the Switch port. And there's a lot of instances where we've done things like that, where people don't. It's not really maybe not transparent to people that we didn't just publish the physical version of something. We actually in-house ported it for the digital release as well.
I think that's key, and it's also a good service for small developers, that may not actually have the resources to bring their game to all these different platforms, but they'd love to release it there. And so it's cool that you guys basically offer that as part of the package, so to speak.
Yeah, we've done that for a lot of games.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of like, developer A comes in, he's got like this build of a game that's hot. I mean, like, just talk us through how like you get something, how you figure out like where it's going, and just like tackling the general process of bringing this game out on different platforms if that it didn't originally exist?
Yeah, so every time that I've been involved, and I can only really speak for those times, it's been something that's in a pre-built engine, right? So Game Maker Studio, Unity, Unreal, that kind of thing, right? I'm particularly like skilled at using Game Maker Studio in Unity for console development, because before I worked at Limited Run, I used to do very similar stuff where I ported games that weren't on consoles just from PC. I ported Game Maker games to consoles, and there's a whole story there that's not exactly relevant to this exact moment. But yeah, so normally how it would work is somebody would get in contact with Doug or Josh, and they'd talk about a game, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we have this game. We have it on PlayStation. We want to do it on Switch. Like the company would want to do it on Switch, but the developer doesn't have the time. They don't have the resources. They don't have the equipment." So usually if it's something that makes sense in our schedule, they just kind of would bring it to, at that time, myself and Adrian, and just be like, "Hey, let's do this." We talk to the developer, we get in touch, we get all of their assets, source code, project files, and everything, and we just, I don't know, we go through the process of porting it from one platform to another. It's something that we've done so many times that unless there's anything particularly tricky about a project, Unity is really easy to work with for cross-platform development. I just recently did Cthulhu Saves Christmas on PlayStation 5. I did last year, and at the time that we got that SDK and that that new version of Unity for PS5, the platform had just barely launched. So we were working on SDKs that were, well, I can't really talk about in too much depth,
Specific
but I mean,
versions,
like you can infer what an SDK would be like for a platform that's brand new, right? So there's a lot of stuff that like, unless you have a specifically difficult project like that where there's a unique condition, Unity's pretty nice for cross-platform development. There's not a lot of insane stuff we really have to do, so it's like, that's why I kind of try to, like, I don't like to talk down or discredit what I do. It's more just like I try to kind of put in perspective that like I'm using the tools that are made specifically to make this job doable, right? So there's only so much of it that I want to sit there and be like, yes, I worked very hard to make this happen, but I do it with tools that are made to help me do it.
So before Limited Run, though, I mean, you were working on your own games, and there's been one that was released physically not too long ago that kind of crossed a bit of a stir. But just kind of talk about, because one thing that hit me so initially, as I talked about in the GDC thing, is that you had such a keen eye for retro design. And I mean, you kind of was someone that it's not just seeing retro graphics and saying, well, that looks like a Super Nintendo game or an NES game, and being correct about that, but you have such a keen eye on what the fundamentals of retro physics and retro game logic behavior is. So like, where was it that you picked up this interest for retro game design and became actually that skilled at replicating it?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. So it's I don't know, it all just makes sense to me. Right, and that's what I've talked to you before. You said a lot of kind things on the last time I was brought up on the show, and I mentioned it's kind of hard to hear that sometimes because I don't think what I'm doing is interesting or special or any better than anyone else ever. So it's hard for me to kind of tell you like, oh, this is where I learned how to do this thing well, because to me it's just something that makes sense. I've been playing video games since I was 3 years old, was when I got my NES, and there's never been a point where I stopped being interested in like retro games, right? So part of it's growing up like with a lower income, so a lot of older video games were just like really accessible to me, right? So you're going to garage sales and flea markets and video stores that are closing down and just finding all kinds of really obscure, interesting stuff and just playing it. And I don't know, I just found every part of it interesting. I think around like my late teenage years when I started getting into speedrunning and glitch exhibitions on games, it started to make me look at games less at a surface level and more like trying to understand, well, what's going on, under the surface that makes these glitches work the way that they do. What's making this game work the way that it does? And as I'm speedrunning games, I'm starting to try and figure out, like, well, okay, why does this level flow the way that it does? Why am I able to get through it in such a way? How does it take advantage of the way the controls work, the movement works, the enemy placement? How is that in conjunction with the level design? How is it working to make that flow as well as it does? And it's just, I played on the NES. There are so many really interesting bad games that separate those games that we all remember as classics, like Castlevania 3, all the Mega Man games. And you sit there and you play a bunch of these games, and you're like, well, why does Mega Man 6 feel so good? Why do these levels feel so good? Why is navigating them so entertaining? And I don't know that I ever really feel like I learned necessarily or picked up anything, but it's, to me, it feels like it must be just a subconscious thing.
Kind of intuitive, basically. Like, you just feel it.
Yeah. And it's become something that, like, to me, it's just natural when I'm designing levels, or I'm thinking about gameplay mechanics, or I'm analyzing like a build of something to try and see what works and what doesn't. I wish there was like a checklist or a thing that I could reference, because I almost feel like that would make the job easier. But it is just kind of an intuitive thing. I feel it, I see it, like I know what I'm looking for, but it's hard to articulate. I know that's kind of a long-winded bad answer, but
no, it's not bad at all. I mean, the ability to pick up a controller and get a sense of what makes a game good at that kind of deep level, I mean, even if you're kind of born with that, it's still pretty remarkable, because you did a game which is called The Revenge of the Bird King.
Yeah,
I think that was you. Right?
That was me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I keep forgetting the title. You did a game called Revenge of the Bird King, and that was even highlighted at Games Done Quick, which I think both you and I are pretty big fans of and supporters of. And it's remarkable to me. I think you were on commentary at the time too, when that was being, which was great to see, because I go back ways with Games Done Quick. I was at the first event,
really,
back in the day, at the Michael Yama's basement. So it's kind of near and dear to my heart, and it was fun to see you there. But the important part of it was that as they were playing Revenge of the Bird King, as you're explaining it, Revenge of the Bird King is very much a Mega Man type kind of 8-bit action platformer, and the fundamentals are so strong. I wouldn't say, in the name of fairness, it's not the best like 8-bit action game in the modern era.
No, and I would be waiting for my moment to tell you it's not the best.
Yes, there are certain things about it, but what I think is remarkable about it myself, as I played it not too long ago, is that the actual physics, the actual game as it plays, is so authentically 8-bit. And I was kind of I had only seen videos of it, and I had seen that Games Done Quick run, but when I played it myself, it's like, it's not the most balanced game, but the fundamentals here are so proper, and that's something that we're seeing all the time with these modern retro games. A lot of them kind of miss the mark on the fundamentals of it. They'll get the graphics right, they'll get the music right, but then the game itself has that like one thing that's like this doesn't feel right based on my experience playing NES or Genesis or whatever. But Revenge of Bird King, I think, is one of the strongest fundamental modern retro games, which that is credit it needs to have. It's not the best game.
Was it made in thinking of that, was it made in Game Maker then?
Yeah, that was made in Game Maker Studio, and there's a lot of interesting things about that game and why it is the way that it is. But first of all, like, thank you. That's super, super kind, and I especially appreciate hearing that from you, because like, if anyone else is gonna have the eye for what I was trying to accomplish there, like, it's you, right? Yeah, there's some interesting things about that game. So I did another game back in 2018 called Super Gun World 2. And Revenge of the Bird King is like a remix / reboot of that game. So it remixes a lot of the levels from that game, a lot of the content from that game, some new content, and it's basically just like a, like a Gaiden or whatever. It's just like a side. Let's jumble this stuff all up and do something like remixed out of it. And so the interesting thing that came from that is that I had to work off of all this source code from something I wrote years ago, right? So I was limited. I've rapidly progressed in just understanding game design, level design, but mostly programming, because I've always considered myself more of like a junior programmer. Programming is definitely not my like main skill. At least if I were to apply myself to a project and say like this is where I think I can benefit the most, design is always where I would kind of appoint myself. My programming, 3 years ago was real bad. So there's a lot of things in that game that, as you said, you pointed out, like authentically it's there. The feel of it is there, but the execution isn't perfect. There's a lot of points where it is really rough around the edges, and I think a lot of that comes down to I made Revenge of the Bird King out of Gunworld 2 in a month. So like I took that original source code and I had 4 weeks. I was like, I'm going to build a new game out of what exists here. I did that in 4 weeks, and I was super limited to how I wrote the code to begin with. So it is the way that it is because it's based off of very amateur code. It was built very fast. It's not indicative of what I can do now.
And I actually feel though that it's also not only for your own design chops, but it's kind of a showcase for what's possible with Game Maker Studio, and why I think it is actually a valuable engine still, or like a set of tools. You can do a lot of amazing stuff. Like you see people trying to do like pixel art games in like Unity and Unreal, and you can absolutely do that. But I think stuff like Game Maker Studio is better suited to those types of games, especially when it comes to creating that authentic feel. And this really showcases it, I think.
I wish more people would pay attention to Game Maker. One of the things I really like about it, working with both it and Unity, if you're making a 2D game, the way Unity updates movement and stuff like that is really designed for 3D. It's designed around a concept of like actual distance, space, whatever, how it updates things in their drawn. And in Game Maker, the way you learn to do movement is on a pixel by pixel basis. Like how you're drawing objects, how you're updating their positioning, it's all based on pixel coordinates. And exactly, if you're making a 2D game, that's what makes sense. And that's why, like, anytime I've discussed with other people about collabing on a project to do something, if we're talking about doing a 2D game, like every time I'm like, whether I'm recommending something for them to use or I'm recommending what we should use, I'm just like, you got to give more attention to Game Maker. People make incredible games in that tool. It's super fast, super powerful. It has it has platform support for PS5 and Xbox Series X now. It's super viable. I don't know why it has the reputation that it does. I don't know why it's so overlooked. And if you want to like pick it up and just learn how to make a game, right, or just tool around with something, it's free. The base version, you have to pay at some point, but the base version is free.
Yeah, I'm using that currently for a project we're working on, and I know for a fact what you just said, because mutual friend of ours, Dopley, who did the CDI Zelda remasters, he used Game Maker to do those.
Yes, he did.
And he again spoke very highly of you because you had been offering quite a lot of support and insight as he had been asking you.
Oh yeah, what he did was incredible.
Yeah,
like
really
absolutely incredible.
And that was his first project. So, just looking at that, he was able to recreate, not the best games to begin with, but he was able to improve them and also recreate the original feel side by side.
Yeah. Well, and beyond that, it is worth noting, there's some big games like Blazing Chrome, Hyper Light Drifter, Katana Zero, like a lot of like really well-known games that like really capture that retro feel. They're all made in Game Maker Studio. So...
And I feel like that for some reason, we all have this idea, or I guess let's say like the general public seems to have this idea of what a Unity game is. Because you see it referenced a lot. You see people call out like, oh, this is a Unity thing. And I think the reputation has improved over the past several years, but it's still a thing. People are like, oh, this looks like a Unity game. But nobody like connects Game Maker with its best games. I think even like the Hotline Miami games were done in Game Maker.
That's actually kind
of,
if
I remember correctly.
It's almost a good and a bad thing in a way, though, because it kind of ensures that there's less recognition when it comes to the Game Maker name, because people don't think about it in that way. I mean, Unity, for better or for worse, people are very familiar with it. And if they see it used in games that are poorly optimized, they might think about it, and then they see a game that's really well done and be like, oh, that was in Unity too? And it makes an impression. And it sort of gets into their head, so to speak, in a way that Game Maker sadly never has.
Yeah, I think it's got this reputation. Maybe this is just my own thought on it, but it's got this reputation from the pre-studio days when it was like, just standard Game Maker. When it was very much a tool that it did not have the chops that it has now. It was very much a super amateur tool, and I wonder sometimes if they still are kind of carrying some of that reputation with them.
I suspect
it's kind of hard to say.
I'm sure that stuff is stuck to it.
It's the main reason I didn't use it for so long, but
just to quickly note something so that our comments field doesn't fill up with it, but Revenge of the Bird King, yes, had a physical release. There was some discussions around it when it was known to exist, because what was the thing there? You basically printed up a low amount yourself. It was not a limited run release.
No, it was not a limited run release.
No, not official.
Yeah.
That was self-published. But it got pointed out very quickly, because I just used the templates we had in the office, because it's like, why would I not just use that? That's there. And I removed the limited run, website from one spot, but it's there in two spots, and I left it on the other one on accident. So that was like one of the big things that spurred an initial controversy. People were like, this is like, they're hiding a limited run release, and like, yeah, that was like an unfortunate mistake on my part, but like you can just be honest, but nobody responds to honesty at all times.
No, I remember that you came out very quickly and clarified every question, but it kind of I got the reputation of being the rarest PS4 game because of all this, and I thought this was kind of funny, just knowing you, that like I was thinking about it, like I don't think Joe's too happy about this.
I wasn't thrilled about it. Like I wanted the game to just come out. That's what I wanted.
I think it did kind of turn a little bit in your favor though, because you did release it digitally on Switch, right?
It was released digitally on Switch, digitally on Vita, and then I was eventually actually able to, this took about a year for me to kind of get my ducks in a row so I could do this, but then I did eventually actually just release the physical PS4. That went on sale on my website a few months back, which was kind of like one of those things that it's just, I kept quiet about it, and I just kept like just trying to negotiate to make it so I could do this. And a digital release on PS4 is also coming. So, all the things that were there to stop me from being able to do it initially, they're taken care of. So that's why I released the physical. Digital's coming. There's just, I've had to get the digital version. It has had to change hands from one like PlayStation developer account to another, and there's some hurdles that we've had to go through to do that.
Yeah. So, and I definitely, we've spoken a bit about the game, and I would definitely, for people who are into speedrunning and just kind of into pattern recognition and stuff like this, it's a fun game. You can go look at the Games Done Quick video where Joe is on commentary explaining the game. You can practice it, because it is a fun game to speedrun. I think definitely
the speedrun's super broken right now too, and that's really amazing. In the current speedrun, like there's an oversight where you can skip the main menu of the game. So that's used in the speedrun. Like during the opening splash screen, you can kind of skip out straight to the world map and skip the title screen, the opening tutorial, like all that stuff. And I never patched that because I'm like, no, this is what I love about seeing speedruns of other games. So I'm just leaving this. Like, let people do it.
Yeah, let's quickly touch a bit more on speedrunning before getting to limited run. But like, That's something that has changed significantly in the last 10 years, speedrunning, because it used to be very much just kind of, a Speed Demos archive, the website, you would supply, you would send in a VHS tape with a run of like Jaws or something on NES and have a world record. And now, it's a business and people are streaming, of course, with Twitch. And then Games Done Quick is racing millions twice a year on this. So what's you were kind of early in the game here, doing speedrunning stuff and getting into it. So what's your take on kind of the growth of speedrunning as we're seeing it now?
I just think it's cool. I don't know. I haven't ever really thought too much about it. I think it's cool. I think it's nice that it's got a bigger audience. What I think has been cool, you say over like the last 10 years or so, we just had a pretty significant, it was recent, like a pretty significant new record on Super Mario Brothers that I feel like these, like, everyone thought the ceiling for a game, whatever, was like here, and
I love that.
Maybe it was for years, right? But somebody like
cracks through.
The more eyes you get on it, the more attention it gets, the more people that it excites, the more new eyes you're going to get in to not only enjoy it, but like to kind of break new ground on it, find new games that maybe people were overlooking. It's been kind of cool. You look at the earlier GDQ events, and it was almost like every single time one of the games you were seeing at the end was like Super Metroid, Mario World, Metroid, yeah. Mario 64, Donkey Kong Country 2.
Honestly, one of my favorites has to be the original Quake. Like,
oh my god,
Quake is insane to watch that.
Yeah,
especially those 100% speed runs on Nightmare or whatever. It's just, whew. Those people are good.
It's just been like, it's been cool to see them go from like every event ends with Super Metroid to like, I think there was one event, I think it started with like they did Undertale, like at the end, and like it was like Super Metroid was, I don't remember if it was the same night and earlier or if it was a previous night, but they did Undertale. It was
a run earlier. It was like a race, I think, earlier that year.
And they did Undertale, and I noticed like after that point they started seeming to have new runners at peak times, playing new games that you didn't see in the year before, or maybe new types of runs on games. And I think that's really cool.
Well, I think for GDQ, the thing there, they had to kind of experiment, and Undertale was the perfect game because people had such an emotional connection to that game. So they brought in new people, of course, new audiences. Because the thing with Super Metroid for all those years was that it was kind of the cap of the whole event because it had that kill or save the animals gimmick. And then not only that, but the actual like competition around Super Metroid is so fierce. And Zoast is an old aspiring company, a friend of mine at Magfest back in the days, and Zoast has been like breaking the Super Metroid records left and right for years now, and he just keeps finding new ways. And excuse me, it's interesting just to see also the tech around speedrunning evolve lately, because people are creating custom-made emulators with new debug features. They're really looking into every aspect of the game to see where there can be like shaved off milliseconds for these new records to be set. And I certainly remember back in like 2005, as at the time GDQ was basically a Magfest kind of sub-event, and there was no such thing going on. It was just like, how good at Contra are you? Let's run through it. There was no like debugging. There was no nothing like this. It was just like, let's do it. Let's do it live.
It's definitely changed a lot. I'm sure there's, I'm sure there's people out there that miss kind of the grassroots style of it, but I don't know. Sure, but I think growth is usually a positive thing. Usually, and as long as it's managed like properly, and I feel like it's been managed properly. It just as like somebody who's been really interested but is still primarily an outsider, right? Like, because I'm primarily a spectator, and I feel like it's been managed. The growth's been managed really well. It's only made it more interesting. It's only opened up new interesting games and runners and stuff like that. I'm excited to see where things go. I'm excited to see how new games are broken, what new games are kind of discovered as people dig back. It's really cool to see. You see a lot of younger people too playing games that if they weren't involved in this or watching this, they like might have never ever even seen these games.
I think it's a way for retro gaming to stay alive, because the retro games are easier to break, they're easier to figure out, because their logic is simple in contrast to like a 3D action game like Nier Automata or something like this. An 8-bit NES game can easily be figured out and kind of optimized, whereas today's games are more random, or can be more random and unpredictable in that sense. And also, of course, like cutscenes being skippable and all this nonsense that comes with it really is interesting.
I think also, one of the key points about retro games that makes it so interesting is a lot of these retro speedruns, you say the logic's simple, they're easier to break, but they're really, really high showcases of skill. Because these are short, generally short, very intensely difficult games, and some of these runs, like if you grew up playing Contra, watching somebody beat Contra in like 12 minutes or whatever, is just like, it blows your mind. It's so exciting to see because what kind of skill and what kind of like practice they had to have to pull that off.
Yeah, it seems like this is something that John would love so much. I think, John, you've been more into GDQ in the last couple of years.
I had only lightly paid attention to some of the bigger runs in the past, but you've kind of pushed me to look at it more often, and it's quite a sight to behold.
It is pixel precision so many times, it is frame accurate. Like, these people are counting frames as much as you
insane.
Are. And it's at the point where it's like, it's a science, obviously, but it's also being executed in real time by human
That's
brain.
actually the thing, is watching some of these runs, I'm almost reminded of those old tool-assisted runs, except for like people are actually doing it, and that's just like,
that's where the Mario 1 record is now.
Yeah,
exactly. It is a tool-assisted
It's
run.
like a tool-assisted run, but like real, by somebody did it, which is nuts.
Back in the day, it was the blindfolded Punch-Out. That was kind of like the big one, right? It was like someone had a blindfold on, and he was only using audio cues and beating every character up to Mike Tyson, and this was considered to be the most insane thing. And now, blindfolded is its own subcategory. People are doing like blindfolded Wind Waker and stuff like this, which is like
I don't even understand why or how.
Someone beat Super Mario 64 last year at GDQ blindfolded and backward. Like, he was sitting with his back to the monitor, so he couldn't even get like any color cue via through the blindfold, and he still beat it, which is just like, how do you do that? That's like in 3D space, like everything is precise.
That's a long way from I used to, my fun trick was to play people in Virtua Tennis on the Dreamcast, but I would sit in the corner and use the VMU as my only screen.
Yeah, right.
That was actually feasible though.
It was. So a very short question before we move on to the limited run stuff, but you were into speedrunning and then you see your own game highlighted, and how did you feel kind of watching the runner having figured out your game? Were you surprised by their discoveries, or was it kind of as you expected people to be playing the game?
I didn't expect people to be playing the game. I was surprised not only to see some people playing it, but to see a handful of people playing it so intensely. I came into a stream at one point, and this person had, they were over 1,000 hours in Revenge of the Bird King, and I was just like, I didn't expect people to play this game for more than like 3 hours total and be done with it, right? Like, that was really cool. Even when like they're talking about like, oh, this game's broken and like this is trash and this was done bad, right? Like, I still found it really, really cool. No part of that offended me or anything. It was just amazing. It was cool. Like, even it's almost like the game was made for like this small group of people, and I felt so happy that to a small group of people they were just intensely loving it so much and analyzing the crap out of it. And none of the glitches and stuff like that surprised me, because like I said, the game was written by a slightly younger me that was very amateur, didn't know what I was doing. I guess as a frame of reference for that, so it's based off the code for Super Gun World 2. I had only been programming for about 6 months total when I wrote Super Gun World 2, to give you an idea of just how amateur like this was. So it was rough to go back to. I don't know. I thought it was really, really cool. I don't think I ever expected to see a GDQ event and see one of my games at it. I wish there's parts of me that wish that it could have happened more in the future when I had one of my new games out that I think is more reflective of who I am and like my game design chops. But it's cool. It's just cool.
You keep kind of putting your own game down, and I kind of see where you're coming from. It's not quite the same, but it's like making videos, and you look back at your videos you did like 4 years ago, and they're like, oh, those suck, but but people still enjoy it, and I think it's the same thing here, because from the outside, I think your game is cool. I like it. It plays
I appreciate
really well.
that.
So. I think you're being a little bit too harsh on yourself, but I know what you mean, though. You see how things have changed, and you're like, okay, I can do better than this.
And it's not about trying to be down on myself. It's one of those things that I'm just trying to be, like, I guess, real, right? Like, one of the last things I will ever do is like pat myself on the back, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to be real about what it is that I made. I know what it is, and I know where I was when I made it, and I know where I am now, right? And it's just growth. I think if you're looking back at everything you did and saying, "Oh, that's the coolest damn shit in the world," it would be a lot harder to grow and get better, right? So I think to me, it's been important to be my biggest critic, because that's how I figure out how to make the things better, right?
Well, I'm sure in the future there will be an opportunity. As we finish our Bubsy game together, I'm sure that can be speedrun at GDQ.
You know what? It might take 10 years off my life, but I would give anything to have that happen.
Yes, we talked about it in our... I forget which video we talked about this, but I said that at GDC we had a discussion that you would be trying to make a good game, and I would be trying to make a Bubsy game, and we would combine these forces to create
something special,
ultimate experience. Yes,
I would love to do that.
We'll see if in the future what it brings us.
We'll see who we have to call.
Yes. But so getting into Limited Run, because you joined them a few years ago now. Can you kind of tell us what happened here, how you came into Limited Run's course here, and then.
Yeah, so I heard about Limited Run kind of when everyone else did. They put out Breach and Clear on Vita, and I missed out on it. I tried to buy it, but I didn't. It didn't sell out immediately. It sold out that day, but I think I just it came to me too late in the day, right? And I went to go buy it, and it was gone. So I knew about them kind of from the start, and I can't remember the exact timeline, but at some point I emailed Josh and Douglas. And, I was saying, like, hey, I've got this game. It was Super Gun World 2 at the time. Well, it was just Gun World 2. That's an important distinction. It was Gun World 2. And I wanted to work with them on it. And at the time, it was only on Xbox One. And Josh wrote me an email back that said, hey, we're only on the PlayStation platform. We don't do Xbox titles. If you get it on PlayStation, let me know, right? And I took that email at face value, right? and I was doing solo dev back then and contract work. I did contract work porting other people's Game Maker Studio games to console. Because at that time, there were not a lot of us in the Game Maker Studio development pool that also did console development. Because console development is, when you look at how, for lack of a better word, easy it is to get into game development with Game Maker, starting from scratch, that hurdle to console publishing is just insanely difficult if your only frame of reference for game development is Game Maker. So there weren't a lot of us there, but there were a lot of games. So I'd work on that, and so I didn't have a ton of money back then. My games didn't sell super well. But I just finished up a contract and had a little bit of money from Gun World 2 on Xbox. And I took that email at face value and I said, okay, I'm going to pay the several $1,000s it's going to cost me, to get a PlayStation 4 development kit. And I got the PS4 Pro dev kit, and I made Yeah, that's what they had at the time. I think I was gonna say something, but I think it's actually NDA, as minute of a detail as it is, so I won't say it. But yeah, I got the Pro Dev Kit, and I ported Gunworld 2 to PS4. But at the time, I was like, okay, I want Limited Run to put this out. So I'm gonna go back and try and improve it as much as I can. So I did. The PS4 version was called Super Gunworld 2, and thank God, thank God that they ended up sticking to that email, because at the time that I finally finished this, Limited Run was starting to really snowball. They were getting a lot bigger. They were doing a lot more titles. And I was concerned that they would look back and be like, oh, we said we'd do this guy's game, but like, we got bigger stuff we can do. We don't need to do this. But I sent it over, and Douglas said that he put it up on their dev kit, and he played it, and he liked it, and they signed it. So I want to say it was in 2018. 2018. The dates are mixing up for me now, but I believe it was in 2018 that we put out Super Gun World 2. And maybe it was 2017. Guys, I'm all mixed up on my dates now. Not that it matters. Not that the dates matter, but they put out Super Gun World 2, and shortly after that, Douglas was talking about having me around for a visit to the office. And I came out to the office just to visit and meet everybody there. And it turned out, Doug had an ulterior motive. That Doug was interested in hiring me, but Josh wasn't. This is at least the story I was told at the time, right? And he thought if Josh got to meet me, we'd connect in some way, and Josh would change his mind. And evidently that's what happened. So at the end of that couple-day visit, they offered me a job, and I took it immediately. Because so they offered me the job, and I called my wife, because we lived in Michigan and Limited Run is in North Carolina. And I called her, and I was like, yeah, they offered me the job, and she didn't even ask me like what the pay was or benefits or anything like that. She just told me immediately. She's like, if you turn down that job, you're fucking stupid. So she was kind of on board it right from the start. And within a matter of, it was only 6 weeks or so, I quickly sold my house and like packed up all my stuff and came down here and started working at Limited Run. I want to say that was in 2018, right? 2019, 2020. Yeah, because I've been here over 3 years. So that would have been 2018.
It would have been around
that
time.
2018.
Because I used to go to their offices quite often, Limited Run up in North Carolina. And I think the first times you were there for me was around like late 2018.
Yeah, it would have been It was 2018. Yeah, because my daughter was born. My daughter was born, and she was a month old when I came to visit. So like, we had a newborn daughter when I came to visit and got the job offer. So and she's 3 now. So it would have been 2018. It was sometime around there that I came and got the job. And then so like, we had to sell this house and move to a new state with this newborn baby. And yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, and that's how I got here. I don't know. I don't know.
As a developer that worked with Limited Run, I was quite happy with that hire. As mentioned, at GDC we met, and it was kind of quick for me to realize that this was a good thing, because I've been pretty close with people like Pete at the company and Douglas, and it is very much like a family over there. And at the same time, then that means there's a dynamic, which if you don't work within that dynamic, it can be difficult, right? It's not that it's a click or anything, but it's just kind of, you're coming in new and fresh. It takes a while, but you were immediately kind of, and to segue this into kind of one of the things we should talk about is that I remember many of our initial conversations was about restoration of retro and kind of making sure that legacy games were given the right treatment, because this avenue that I was helping Limited Run with at the time, and then this is kind of the start of these games compilations and of course reprints being done. So we had Modern Vinci Gamer on a while ago where he talked about his side of the Carbon engine, and he pointed out, of course, that the Carbon engine started because of the groundwork that you had done and also you reaching out to him. So can you talk about the beginnings of the Carbon engine from your side?
Yeah, so you're spot on. Again, kind words. I appreciate that. But you're spot on that one of the most important things to me at Limited Run was, paying the right respect to everything that we worked on whenever it was like within my power to do so, right? Like anything that I could do or that we could do to do something right was super important to me. And not alone, like Josh is also very much into retro games and stuff like that. He's got a really keen eye for retro games, and he's very tuned into that market, like sometimes like what they're looking for, or what's desirable and stuff. He and I had talked multiple times about emulation, because there was there's two ways you can look at it. There's games that you want to preserve or bring together in a way that can be delivered. What's the right way to say what I'm trying to say here? I'd like to articulate this. There's games that are very valuable that maybe aren't finding an audience right now, or could find an audience in a way that financially benefits the original developer or publisher, right? There's a lot of content out there that is still very, very valuable and very strong, and that's one of the things Limited Run has always done, is really try to support developers. And this was something that we had talked about, because it was like, well, we can kind of do two things here. We can find a way to bring a lot of this content in a more easily deliverable way to casual customers. Because as simple as it is for us, right, there's a lot of people that just don't want to get on a computer and use an emulator or whatever, or whether it's a technical hurdle or a moral hurdle. There's a lot of different hurdles you have to go through.
I could speak to this as well, as there's a mentality when you load up something on an emulator on a computer that's different from playing it on an actual console kind of setup, in terms of so, at least for myself, it's difficult sometimes to get into those things. It's more like you dabble in it. I got this big old list, I'll just load up a ROM here or there and have a little bit of fun, but it's hard to dig in. So I get that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons, right? There's financial reasons that keep people out of retro games, because you're buying all this secondhand vintage equipment that is very, very expensive. So that just finding a way to deliver it to people that's easy to consume is going to help you get some really great overlooked games into people's hands. That's super important. That was important to me. It was important to Josh. And then finding a way to allow our partners to use their back catalogs in a way that could support them is also really important to us, because at Limited Run, we deeply care about our partners and finding ways to help support them and what they want to do, right? So it was something that just made a lot of sense, and that's kind of where it stopped. It made sense. It was something we wanted to do, but we didn't really have any idea where to start. And I just sort of started putting my feelers out there. It was never really established as something like, hey, this is an official task, go do this. It's just one of those things that we have so many things that we want to do at Limited Run, and so many projects that we talk about, but there's only so many resources to accomplish. And this is one of those ones that I just couldn't get it out of my head. I knew if I found the right way to do it, there was no reality where Josh was going to tell me no. I knew he wanted to do it too. So I just kept putting feelers out there, and I saw Modern Vintage Gamers. I'm used to calling him by his real name, but I don't know how much he likes being called by his real name on publicly.
Yeah, just MVG.
Yeah, but so I saw MVG's video where he ported Diablo to Switch, and I thought it was fascinating. Like, I wasn't thinking about it from any like business point of view, right? I already watch his content. I saw the video the day it went up, and just watched it like I do any of his other videos, and I thought it was fascinating. And then, it stewed in my brain for a minute, and I said, wait a minute, like, he didn't have source code, he didn't have like an SDK, he just had a homebrew modded Switch, and I was like, this guy, like, he knows what he's doing. And I was like, but he doesn't look like he works in game development. Like, it's not, it never is presented that he like has history in game development. But damn, did it seem like he really knew what he was doing. And outside of the technical part, his videos really showcase that he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's looking for. He knows what he's talking about. And I had to contact him. I contacted him and I said, like, this is the deal. This is something that I want to see happen. Something I want to do. What do you think about this? And he and I got to talking, and we had already kind of this backup project with Way Forward to do Shantae. So we kind of knew, like, okay, if we're gonna dip our toes into this, we have a game to start with. So we don't have to like waste a bunch of time on developing something and not knowing how we're going to. I mean, like, it's a business, so like not knowing how we're going to monetize that. And knowing we had Shantae to start with made it easier to really push into, right? So yeah, I talked to MVG, and he was super into it. He felt really strongly that he was the guy for the job, and I didn't really need the convincing. I knew he was the guy for the job, and we kept talking, and then we just started working together. We started signing a contract, and he started working with us, and told him it was Shantae, and we got to work, right? And he was incredible. I mean, like, there's no point in this project where he ever made me like second guess anything that was happening. Like, everything progressed smoothly. He's so knowledgeable, like, technically on it. And very, very early on, when we're doing early builds of the game, and I had to tell him, hey, the timing is off on the audio. It's off by like however many frames, and like we're losing this many frames on button inputs and stuff like that. I'm not the one coding the engine, the emulator and stuff. So it's always hard for me to come in and say, like, hey, I don't know what you did, and I don't know how difficult it is to do what I'm asking you to do, but you need to do it, right? At no point when I told him, like, this is not right or this needs to be better, at no point did he ever respond in a way that was like negative. It was very much like he had the exact same goal as I did. He knew things weren't like right in those parts, right? And it was established very early in the project that he and I both wanted the same thing, and we were totally free and open to talk about what was the high points of the current progress and what were the low points. And there was never any like any tension or like gridlocking on stuff like that. So it was established super early that he was just the perfect guy for the job, and he was the perfect guy to work with. We're still working together, obviously, and I mean, man, I don't even know. I could talk about him for an hour, and just like tell you all these things that are amazing about working with him. And I truly hope that we keep working together for years. Like, he's amazing. And it's been super special for me because it ended up working out, right? And it's only expanding. We're only expanding on this stuff. And we talked earlier about I did a lot of ports and stuff for Limited Run, and now this has become, I would argue 50% of my job is moving forward on this sort of project, preservation and emulation and stuff.
Does this mean you guys are looking at other platforms as well then, kind of going forward? It's obviously started with a Game Boy. I mean, are there other platforms you'd like to tackle?
There are other platforms we'd like to tackle. Yes, there's a lot of stuff ranging from things that I won't say anything because obviously NDAs, but there's platforms we want to tackle ranging from like the obvious to some stuff that's quite ambitious.
All right.
And even with some of those more obvious platforms, there are some things that I really want to accomplish that will be ambitious. We want to do everything as right as we possibly can, and as we expand to new platforms, that mindset's not changing.
I just can't believe you're tackling the CDI and the DVC car. I mean,
yeah, I know, right?
It's a tall order. But
wait till you see the 3DO.
I'm curating the whole thing.
I believe in you.
It's been a cool journey. It really did. It started from a conversation with Josh and I, and I just I took the ball and I ran with it because I knew he would be like, let's go. I knew, and the conversations had already happened, right? Like I knew if I took the time to find a person and set this up in motion, I knew it was going to work out. And it's really exciting to kind of see where we're going to be going in 2022. I think it'll be interesting to kind of see. I think it'll be interesting to see how people respond to 2022
plans. Yeah, I've been following this for a while with you, and it's fun to see it working out as well. Though it's not a surprise because I knew from the day you started working on this that this is going to work out, because not only because you're working with MVG, but again, you were someone that just fundamentally had it. You have the that you need to understand curation for these games, and then also recognizing the performance that's needed for them to accurately be represented on modern hardware. So I always knew that like this was going to become a thing. And it just needed, of course, the perfect game with Shantae, technical marvel for the Game Boy. And what's really cool, and I don't think this is under your NDA because you announced it, you're doing Kunio-kun Tachibanka or River City Girls Zero.
Yes.
Which
for a second I was like, we haven't announced that. What do you don't? But like, no, we did. We did announce that.
We did
announce that
at E3.
Yes.
Right.
And that's so exciting because, of course, I'm a huge Kunio-kun fan. I've working on a book about the series and all this stuff, and seeing that announcement is like, here now we're getting a proper licensed release of this incredible lost game because it was never released in the US originally, and now thanks to your work with the Carbon Engine alongside MVG, potentially thousands and millions of people in the future will be able to play what is one of the best games of the Super Famicom. And I mean, that's an amazing achievement because a few years ago this wouldn't have been reality, and this would just have been a relic of collectors and enthusiasts like me and several $100s on eBay. But thanks to your work now, this is going to be available for everyone around the entire world, and that really speaks to preservation. This is true preservation because now people will be able to enjoy this game.
Well, that's something I like about what LRG's doing in general, is that it's this fusion, of finding the right licenses, doing the right work on repackaging in interesting ways, making sure it's technically sound in the back end, all of those things together, and also like the cartridge re-releases as well, and pretty much mostly doing those right is, all that stuff kind of adds up, and it works really well, I think, and I'm really happy to see it.
I'm happy that you guys are
become valuable.
It has.
I'm happy you guys are happy.
It's become a market. Yeah, I mean, as a fan, I'm super happy because it's just like John said, it's done accurately, voltage wise and build wise.
That's important, right?
Yeah.
You'd be,
I worked for a competitor for a bit doing retro games, and getting that through, just the accuracy of the actual design of the cartridge and stuff, it can be difficult because some people don't have that mentality and don't know. It's you're explaining hieroglyphics. You're trying to explain ancient technology, and it's like, well, it's 3 volts, 5 volts, does it matter? It's like it does. It really does. So it can be very frustrating, but at the same time, I think now with the documentation and of course work like yours, it's like people are there's resources to point to, and we're finally getting there. So it's fun to see that this market is now lucrative. I mean, people are making money of these games that are 25 years old in a way that no one expected.
I think the part that's most important to me when you talk about that, like that it is lucrative, right? And to me, it's super important again that we are finding this way to help developers utilize their back catalog in ways that they didn't have the resources, or maybe didn't even realize that it was lucrative to begin with, right? It's super important, and speaking strictly about like River City Girls 0, which I can't really talk about, but one thing I can say is that is taking this game from a back catalog and delivering it, in a way that more people can consume than ever would have been able to before, and in a way that, right, it benefits the developers, and some work is put into that to make it. Well, I can't really talk about that, but we're trying really hard to make something that we're trying really hard to make something that people are going to really enjoy. That's kind of the ambition with every project that we're going to do, that we get to do something that people are really going to enjoy and they're going to be happy with. My hope is anybody plays anything we do and they feel like it's right, even if there may be, times where there's like a technical imperfection or something like that, that might have been overlooked. My hope is that at its core, it feels right, it looks right, it sounds right, and it's delivering the game in a like as close to authentic way as possible. And a lot of that credit goes to MVG. He's really knowledgeable. This whole initiative is like, this whole initiative has been kind of like me pushing it and kind of running the show, right? But he's making it happen, right? I'm there helping him, but he's making it happen. And yeah, I mean, he deserves all the credit in the world. I was so happy to see how much credit he was getting as this came out.
Well, I mean, sure, but credit also goes to you, because this wouldn't have happened without your determination and also overview. I mean, you knew what to execute here, and finding the right people and having the insight into where to find them and how to get them on board. So, I mean, don't cut yourself short.
No,
I mean,
I'm not. I'm just, it's one of those things.
Wouldn't have happened without you.
It's one of those things. Yes, very much. Like I took this and I ran with it, and it's been. I've had a vision for how all of these projects are going to go, and that vision is getting more and more ambitious. Josh and I are always talking about what we're going to do next and what's viable, what's not viable. And
as your friend too, we were just waiting on you to have this opportunity, because we knew, the day this comes, you would do it. So it's great to see that you actually did execute and really, live up to the expectations here. So
that's super
it's
appreciated.
An amazing job that you've done.
I appreciate that.
And also, let's just make a note of how inclusive LRG are, because you're talking about making people happy and giving them what they want, but you also are making them miserable and giving them something no one wants. And Plumbers don't wear ties.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's happening.
That is happening.
Yeah, that is happening. That is a video game.
Is it?
No, it's not.
Well,
I think I take up objections to this.
It's
a video thing.
It's a video based interactive product.
I mean, it is interactive. There's branching paths. I mean, I guess it is in a sense a visual novel.
it's the visual novel.
It's the American visual novel.
That was really. Yeah, that was Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is like, Josh has been, again, there's only so much I'll say, but I feel like I could talk about this because Josh is just active on Twitter regarding this. This is something that he has been mustering up for some time.
I've known about it for 3 years, is it? Yeah.
I want to say the first year I got hired, it at least got brought up as like he was trying to track people down.
We talked about it at GDC. So, yeah, it's been in the works for a long time, and I tried to help him as much as I could back then, because I had some connections to the game. So I do remember that, like, I was throwing everything I could at him. It's like, I guess somewhere here might find it.
I think that's one thing you can always say about Limited Run and the people that we have there is we have an incredible team, very talented, very dedicated, very passionate people. And if we want to do something, even something like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, if we want to do it, we will go through everything we have to do to make it happen, right? Like, if there's something we want to do, we're going to do it. Not a lot of people would spend 3 years trying to get together what they need to do Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, but we will.
Do you guys actually have like the actual source code for this stuff, or do you have to kind of like recreate this?
I can't speak to that. I'm not so I was originally going to be the programmer for the new version of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
But not now.
Yeah, and I really wanted to, but like, a lot of the carbon stuff, I just don't have. I don't have the bandwidth, the time, to spend working on it. I mentioned earlier in the show, huge shout out to Adrian. He's incredibly talented, incredibly smart person. He was the programmer that was still working on ports when I got hired at Limited Run. And, he was very patient with me in teaching me and kind of walking me through some of the stuff that he did and working with me on some of those early projects. We did Double Switch together. And to my understanding, this will be an Adrian joint. He's going to be the one helming this production. So once it was kind of established that, like, okay, I don't really have the time for this project, I got to kind of step back. I just am too busy to pay attention, right? So I don't know if they have source code. I don't know what assets they have.
It was confirmed. It was confirmed on Twitter that they do have access to the original assets. So I'm guessing that is the original pictures.
Yeah.
That they can scan in. So this is.
Although I almost feel like in a case like this, you guys should have like a race. Like somebody starts with the source code and somebody has to redo it from scratch from just the assets.
See who wins.
See who can actually build it faster. And then like film it and you include it as a bonus.
Put it out as a documentary. Yeah, so we have assets. I don't know if we have source code. It's just kind of one of those projects that you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised. There's so much that goes on at Limited Run that despite me kind of having a hand in every single game that we produce, because I also work with all of our partners through the submission processes, right? So like literally every game that Limited Run produces at some point passes by me and I'm involved in some capacity, right? Despite that, there's stuff that I see and I'm like, yeah, okay, and then I just tune it out because I just don't have the time, right?
So last thing before we let you go, Joe, is we've brought it up a few times on the show, so let's get the man himself talking about it shortly here. You have built an arcade in your garage. We have featured it on the show before. Just to quickly tell us about, where did this idea come from? I'm guessing you going to the arcades as a kid, but what was kind of the genesis of you starting your own arcade in your garage?
So I did go to, when I used to go camping as a kid, every summer there was this kind of old arcade that was up near the campground, and I loved it. Loved the arcade. I got to play all kinds of games that I was a little too young to have experienced when they were like relevant, right? That memory is stuck with me forever, and I've just, I'm just super fascinated by arcade games, arcade hardware, the cabinets. When you talk about game design, cabinets are super fascinating because you're designing a piece of furniture essentially to make your game work. You have to design. It's just stupid stuff like the placement of the buttons, the types of buttons and joysticks, the height of it, the shape of it. everything about it is just super fascinating because it all plays into this authentic experience of this game. You can play Donkey Kong anywhere, but do you really like? You got to sit down at one of those Nintendo cabs and play Donkey Kong. You know, it's a totally different experience. And I was always really fascinated by it. I've always loved it. I've always wanted arcade games, but cost and space has always kept me out of it. And it's actually Arcade 1-Up that finally pushed me to do this. So I really liked some of their products. You know, I have my criticisms about it, but as a whole, as a consumer product, I think they're really, really cool. And I got the Turtles Arcade 1-Up for myself because I used to play that game at Chuck E. Cheese. Fuck, love TMNT, you know. And my wife's favorite arcade game is Miss Pac-Man. There was a Miss Pac-Man Galaga at a bowling alley when her and I were dating shortly after high school, and we used to play. And Galaga's my favorite arcade game, and Miss Pac-Man was hers, so it's like this perfect cabinet. So Arcade 1-Up had a Miss Pac-Man. I bought that. She loved it, and then we were like, man, we want to get more. Maybe I want to actually get an arcade cabinet, but I don't have space for it. And it was actually her idea that we take the garage, and she's like, hey, we have this garage that we don't store our cars in. There's no real reason to. We don't have winters here. So, you know, she's like, we could go in there and we could climate control the garage and set up dehumidifiers to keep it you know, less moist in there and keep the temperature controlled to keep the machines safe. And she's like, we could put stuff in there. It was completely her idea. So we kind of made this list of like, these are some of my favorite arcade games of all time. These are like some of my grail cabinets. And, you know, I don't know if it was COVID kind of closing down barcades at the time that contributed to this, but I was finding cabinets, like one of my grail cabinets was Killer Instinct. And I thought, I will never find this. And I found one for really cheap, and it had only had, I think, 2 owners in its whole lifetime. It had like the original manuals with it. Everything, like the sticks and buttons, were completely original. It all worked perfect. The side art has like no gouges or scratches in it. It's just like one after another, we just kept finding these cabinets that it just felt like maybe there's a reason that they're easy to find right now and they're cheaper right now, and maybe now's the time to do it. So just kind of went wild with that. Got some of my like absolute favorite games: Killer Instinct, NBA Jam, Donkey Kong. Dude, NBA Jam is so good. I saw you guys' video that you did for that, the PlayStation video. Yeah, that's one of my absolute all-time favorite arcade games. I want, you know, once we started to kind of collect some of these cabinets, we were like, okay, like there's an aesthetic that we all loved. Let's like recreate that aesthetic with the, you know, like the fluorescent carpet and black lights and stuff like that. We got a like a dual set like basketball hoop game in there. Crazy Taxi, another like absolutely fantastic game. We've got a DDR machine in there. Gauntlet 2. I've got a really cool Gauntlet 2. I'll take a picture for you. The story I got about this Gauntlet 2 is it was converted from a Gauntlet 1, and it was converted into a German Gauntlet 1, and they were going to be sent overseas. And then I guess they decided to like cut the amount of stock they were going to send out, right? And they converted some of those now German Gauntlet cabinets back to just converted them to Gauntlet 2, and you know, kept them here, right? At least this is the story I was able to kind of dig up for it. Who knows if it's true, right? But the top artwork, the control panel artwork for my Gauntlet 2 was absolutely destroyed. So when we went to remove it to get like a restoration art to put back over the control panel, underneath it was German Gauntlet 1 artwork for the control panel, which, like, you know, like I said, I don't know if that story is true, but like having heard that story and then finding this cabinet, like it lines up with the story that I've heard before. And I just like when I saw it, it was just like, oh my god, like I can't. And the German artwork is like pristine. It's perfect. So I left it. Yes, I left it. I did not put anything over the top of it. So It's got the Gauntlet 2 artwork on the sides and stuff like that, but the centerpiece is German Gauntlet 1. It's very cool. Yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. We have a Frogger cabaret cabinet. I want pinball. Don't really have the space and the technical like maintenance know-how to handle pinball.
You have that at Games virtual pinball.
I do have the at Games virtual pinball.
And that works well.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm not like, I don't love the game lineup, but it's super set up to be modded. Like, it even just includes a like totally available HDMI port so that you can plug a computer into it and do like emulated pinball on it. Which is probably going to be like what I do at some point so that I can run like, you know, some more popular pinball games on it. But it feels really nice. The screen looks nice. The size is nice. I think it's a totally viable alternative because real pinball is a lot of maintenance and they're very expensive.
They're also very, very large, like the real pinball tables, as we know from a friend of the show, Klaus Wolf, who has his living room full of real pinball tables, and they pretty much occupy most of the space in there.
But they're so cool.
They are cool.
Wow,
they
really the sounds of it and like the feel of it, it's just
all the clunking and just noises. And
they're all works of art.
Mm-hmm.
I love
just technically and aesthetically.
Like engineering art. Like they're beautiful. I love them. When I
go watch the documentary Tilt on the creation of pinball.
Oh my god,
and,
I might have to. That sounds awesome.
If you ever come over here, Joe, we'll have to take you to the pinball museum nearby. That's it's got the chronological pinball journey. They've got like 100-something tables down there, starting from like the 70s or maybe like the really oldest ones up to like some of the latest ones, and it's an amazing trip to go through those.
Yeah, we got to get you over to Europe sometime so you can feast on our pal goodness.
You know, I've never been out of the country, so.
Oh wow. It's time.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would love to do
eventually, that. Yes.
So Joe, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been really fun to hear your journey and continuing journey. I'm sure we'll have you back to talk about future projects as they come out.
Or maybe join us for a stream. We could play some NBA Jam or something.
You want to throw it on some NBA Jam?
That's right.
We have some plans for NBA Jam, so I'm sure you'll pop up several times on the channel. But it's been so much fun to have you on finally. As I said at the beginning, I feel sometimes that you take a bit of a back seat and let other people, speak. But it was time to kind of get your story out there too, because you do so much fantastic work. And I know I speak for all the developers that work for Limited Run that you made a huge difference for that company and also for all the developers and their ability to now be on Switch, PS4, different consoles. You made a huge impact on the industry as large. So it's really a testament to your skills that you're here today and talking to us.
I don't know if that's true, but it's super appreciated. It makes me feel good to hear it. I just want to do cool stuff and really Limited Run has provided me with the most unbelievable opportunities. I can't imagine I am where I am. It's been an unbelievable opportunity to be able to be given the resources to do some really cool stuff.
And it's been a great opportunity to talk to you today. So if you like Joe's work, they can find you on Twitter. Where, Joe?
My Twitter handle is @SuperNESJoe. That's where you find me.
Follow fun industry stories and just your general hijinks are up there. Also a nice nod to Bionic Commando in your name there. So I think so, at least. That's where you got it, right? Super Joe?
Nope.
That's the name of the Bionic Commando character.
Man, you're right. But
also,
I had not put that together. No. Just Super Nintendo, man.
Yes, okay.
But you know what?
I'm a huge Bionic Commando fan.
I'll let you think that was all for you, and we have that connection with Bionic Commando. I'll let you think that. I'm sorry, most of my connection with Bionic Commando was the reboot.
And hey, let's leave the interview on this. Limited Run, please do Bionic Commando Rearmed.
Oh my god, Rearmed was so good. It was so good, but no, I was thinking about like the 3D one.
Oh, the Mike Patton
the one where the dude's arm got his wife got ground up into an arm, and
yeah,
go Bionic.
I love that game.
It's been great having you on, Joe. I'm sure you'll be back. I'm sure you'll be on some streams with us. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, so thanks for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I would love to talk to you guys again in the future.
Of course. And John, of course, thank you for joining me. And I know you're silently panicking about the time as your son needs to go to bed. So let's wrap it up.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, ring the notification bell, do all that fun stuff. And until next time, this is Audi and John signing off.